This is a far later start to the day than I usually have, but I was up so late last night. Yesterday was Dewey's 24-hour readathon. It started at 7 a.m. my time, and I read from 9 in the morning until 1:30 this morning or last night, which is far longer than I usually go in a readathon. I usually conk out at about 11, but I had a lot of fun. I missed Dewey's back in April and I didn't want to miss the October one, and it turns out that this was the 10th anniversary of Dewey's, which was really cool. So I mostly read short fiction. I read over 100,000 words of short stories, which was really startling. I didn't realize that would be so many words, but yeah. And I also listened to the majority of one of the audiobooks I'm going to talk about this time. So yeah, let's get into it. I have the physical copies of these books, but I actually listened to both of them on audiobook. And the first one is Revelation Space by Alastair Reynolds. Alastair Reynolds has been recommended to me by a lot of people, but I picked up this copy on a book shopping trip with Bree after Paul had read it and thought very highly of it. So I finally read it. How to summarize this? It's like a hard science fiction novel set hundreds and hundreds of years in the future when people are living on different planets and have not faster than light ships, but things they call light huggers that hug the speed of light. They get really close to the speed of light. So it is possible to travel around the galaxy, but it takes a long time. There's this man named Dan Sylvester who was kind of obsessed with an ancient dead alien civilization called the Amarantum on a planet called Resurgam. He's convinced there is something important to know about the Amarantum, but everybody else doesn't believe him, doesn't understand his obsession, because they think that all the evidence points to the Amarantum never having achieved space flight and that they were wiped out by some sort of mysterious event that hurt their star or something. But what Dan might find at Resurgam is going to have huge consequences for everybody. Then there is Anna Corey, who is forced into taking a job to assassinate Sylvester from this mysterious woman or AI named the Mademoiselle. And then there is a group of ultras, very, very highly modified human beings on a light hugger ship. I think she's the engineer maybe of the crew, named Volyova, is the primary person from that group, and they are on their way to kidnap Sylvester because they want him to cure their captain, who has been infected by a devastating and horrible alien virus. So they're all converging on Sylvester, and they're all converging on the secret of the Amarantum. I really enjoyed this. Initially, I was confused about what was going on because all these people start out at different places at different times, and then as they travel over long distances that take years, they finally converge at the same place at the same time. By halfway through the book, it was all falling into place for me, and I loved the ending of this book. I was taken aback at how surprisingly the story actually brings together all these little pieces. I really didn't like Sylvester. He's a very arrogant man. He's intended to be that way. And I kind of initially disregarded some things about him and his past because I thought they weren't important, and I didn't care because it was Sylvester. But then they turned out to be really integral to the story. And I really love it when books can take all those sorts of pieces and make them fit together. The thing that I am up in the air about, even a couple of days later after finishing it, is how the characters behave. It seems like all the characters are very cold and very dispassionate. Nobody seems to really care about each other. Even these ultras who have known each other for years, everybody seems to be out for themselves, and their trust and their loyalty in each other will break down really quickly. And I didn't find much in any of the characters to really care about them, to really root for them. Corey came the closest because she actually has a sympathetic backstory related. And yet at the same time, I don't know if I believed the backstory, and I don't really think that Corey was bothered by it anymore. In some ways, I think this might be because of the world. These people are so far removed from us. They're a different kind of human, especially the ultras who are arguably not human anymore. So they wouldn't behave the same way. And the types of people who would get involved in a situation like this would be the cold, dispassionate, dangerous people anyway. I do hope that it's not a case of a first-time writer just not knowing how to write characters very well, but I fully intend to read the other 2 books in the trilogy and we'll see how those turn out. Next, I did reread A Hatful of Sky by Terry Pratchett, which is the second Tiffany Aching book. I reread The We Free Men very recently and loved it all over again. And I have to say that A Hatful of Sky is, for me, even better than The We Free Men. I continue to have huge nostalgic reasons for loving it. It was originally read to me by my dad, and there are some passages in this book that I remember so vividly because my dad was laughing so hard at the Nac-Mac-Feegle that he could barely read the page. And that's the type of thing that will stick with you. So I thought this was much more memorable and much funnier than the first book, but I think it also contains some themes and topics that resonate far more with me personally. I think the key thing about this book is that Tiffany is a very precocious young witch. She's incredibly talented, and the first book was basically her success story. But here, she's apprenticed to another witch, Miss Level, and she can't always do everything perfectly. She's learning what it means to really be a witch, which is not glamorous and involves very little actual magic. And I wouldn't say that it's taking her down a peg or two, it's just that she's pushing up against the limits of her knowledge and her abilities, and it's really realistic. And I like that. It makes Tiffany a little bit more flawed like everybody else. The theme of this one for me is taking responsibility. The thing is that witches are not allowed to just stand by and let somebody else deal with problems. They have to act. They have to do something, because if they don't, maybe nobody will. They have to rely on themselves. And that also, you have to take responsibility for your own actions, even when it's embarrassing, even when it's mortifying, even when it's hard. Making excuses never gained anybody respect and never helped them grow and learn as a person, but taking responsibility for yourself does. I really love that message. Basically, I think everybody at one point or another does something wrong and is forced, like by parents, to fess up to it, to take responsibility, and it is embarrassing, and you want to make excuses to just get out of the situation, but you can't, and you will never make that mistake again after it's over. So once again, I love this so much, and I will be continuing on with at least the next 2 books on audio. That is what I read this past week. Not a lot, but some really good stuff. Let me know how your weekend has gone. Did you participate in Dewey's? And I will talk to you again soon. And until then, bye.